I'm about to show you how to make this teeny tiny Tifa diorama, so stay tuned. My name's Candy and welcome back to the craft cupboard. To start with, I'm going to go straight to my PS5 and get a bunch of screenshots and a bunch of videos that I can keep referring back to. From there I can look through my iPad and any reference I need is going to be right there in front of me. Okay, to start I'll use my in-game references to sketch out a condensed floor map of 7th Heaven. I don't make things to a particular scale, I just measure with my heart. I've made a base out of XPS foam and crack on with making a trapdoor. If you know, you know. I've cut out approximately 14 billion ice cream sticks and given myself a blister, cutting the curved edges off to make an authentic wooden floor. I painted several shades of brown to prevent it looking too uniform. Using a mixture of Mod Podge and paint, I slap it onto the base to seal the foam. When it's dry I use the same mix to stick on our tiny floorboards. This normally takes about 3 years to complete, so make sure you clear your diary. Using the remainder of the Poopy Podge potion, I'll throw another layer on top to further seal the panels in place and give the floor a nice lived-in layer of grime. But Tifa's no scrub, so on top of that we'll add a nice layer of floor polish using gloss Mod Podge. Using sandpaper we'll scuff up what would be high foot traffic areas of the floor. I found this brick pattern foam roller at Comic Con and it has been an absolute life changer for time saving. You just roll that sucker over foam and it will transfer the brick pattern to both the foam and your hand. If you need to, go back over with a ballpoint pen to make the pattern deeper. Going forward, any foam you see me painting has been sealed with Mod Podge. I painted some high contrasting bricks, then dapple the wall very lightly with a tiny amount of light paint on a piece of Juan sheet to pick up the texture. Paint over with a very dark or black watery paint and pat some of it up before it gets a chance to dry. To make the cracked cement that's peeling off the walls of the bar, I add a couple of drops of colour to a flexible acrylic modelling paste, then smooth her on like butter. Is our secret trapdoor looking a bit too secret? Well, let's fix that by an obvious iron trim around it. We don't want Avalanche forgetting where it is now, do we? When using wood, superglue is a great way of making an instant bond to yourself. To make the main bar, I make the body out of foam, give it a good old dollop of Mod Podge, and stick on several hundred more ice cream sticks. That hot glue is definitely too hot. If your foam is becoming lava, turn your glue gun off for a hot minute and let her cool down. The top of the counter is made with a single sheet of balsa. More stir sticks to create the table, and we're single-handedly responsible for the UK's deforestation. Chop them down to size using a craft knife or saw, then flip her over and give her some stabilisation for her leggies to stick to. Whack on a base layer of brown, pick out some highlights using lighter paint and dry brush, then a final layer of watery dark paint dabbed on to add more texture and depth. Polish her up with gloss Mod Podge, and I'm adding another layer of depth by airbrushing from the bottom up with a very dark paint. Onto the over-the-counter cupboards now, and I'm adding a little coving using my Dremel to later add some under-counter lighting. You know how to paint her by now. Next up we have the Pinball Machine. I print out a flat pack plan to use as a template, then cut out pieces of balsa wood. I'm using an LED connected to a switch so that we can have lighting coming from within. Add a hole for it to shine through and stick the whole thing together using a combination of super glue and hot glue. The Pinball Machine holds more significance in the original Final Fantasy VII than it does in the remake, but I've already made that trapdoor so you know we'll be making the basement in another video. I add a large, strong magnet to its back. It won't be used during this build, but when I make the basement it's going to come in mighty handy. I give it a base colour of gunmetal grey with my airbrush. To make the magic happen, I've taken several close-up shots of the artwork on the machines in the game. So I replicate those on Procreate, print them out on Bristol board, which is a thick paper, and stick it to the machine. Finally, I'll use some clear plastic on top, which I've cut out from a takeaway sushi box. So I've realised that I've done two stupids whilst making this little guy. The first one you might have noticed, there's two pinball machines in TIFA'S bar, and I stuck the wrong artwork onto the wrong pinball machine. So where we've got the bomb one here, I've got the golden time pinball on the side, so I need to change that. The second one, after I put the film on top of this, I realised I really wanted to have some 3D elements put on there. So I've taken the film off and I'm just going to put some little beads on there to make it look 3D. Once again, I've printed the plan off to continually use as a reference while I construct the bulk of the body from foam. Using a hot wire cutter, I'm hollowing out two holes, which I'll use to secure a transparent hose that I'll hook through to create the lights on the front. I'll make the front of the jukebox with another piece of foam, then encase the whole thing using cardboard to make its outer shell. I want the light within to change colours, so I stole the LED and battery from this little tea light candle. Then I'll use the worst soldering technique ever to attach it to a new switch and house it within the jukebox, leaving a hole in the side for the switch to poke through. I close up the back, and now with the basic shape made, I'll add detail to the jukebox using card and foam. Seal, paint, repeat. The super reflective silver paint I've used here is Molotow Liquid Chrome Refill and is the most reflective paint I've found so far. Finally, I'll add details using an adhesive backed mirror sheet. With a tiny nail art brush, add the final beepers and boopers. Tifa has a beautiful 50s style fridge which I'll make using techniques we've already covered. This time I'll be using 3 layers of gloss Mod Podge to seal it, and once it's been painted I'll coat it with a clear nail varnish. The fridge is smooth, so I'm trying to take out as much texture from the foam as possible. Time to start putting it all together. Conveniently, the shape of 7th Heaven lines up perfectly for me to leave a section to house all the electrics. I found these adorable little alcohol bottles online and I've used them here to save time, but if you want a stab at making them from scratch, you could model the shape in polymer clay, make a mould using a silicone putty, then cast it using either a UV or 2-part epoxy and print out the labels. Scattered on the bar and tables are some menus, and the fridge has one of Marlene's drawings and a couple of family photos which I've made in Procreate and printed out on Bristol board. What does every bar need? Snacks. Pizza specifically. I'm making a pizza tray from balsa wood. Then making a teeny tiny pizza using coloured polymer clay. To make a plate, I heat up some plastic from a takeaway tray, smush it over a coin, cut it out, scuff it up with sandpaper, then paint it white, and for the love of God, if you don't want to get the black lung, use a respirator when melting plastic. Then seal it with some clear nail polish. Back to the polymer clay, and I'm going to make a little desk lamp. I smush it into a pear shape and stick a cocktail stick down the centre so the lampshade has something to hang from. To make the lampshade, I'm using some patterned scrapbook paper. This bar runner is felt with an adhesive backing which I stick straight to the bar. For lack of a better alternative, I'm sticking some Doll's House wine glasses to it with some super glue, although be warned, super glue can make plastic cloudy looking. I'll turn this piece of fake Lego into a cutlery holder by simply shaving the pattern off the bottom, filling it with Doll's House cutlery I found online and sticking it straight to the bar runner. I've made myself a little TV shelf, and the TV itself is actually a tiny cheap MP3 player that you can load videos onto. In the shady corner of 7th Heaven is a little kitchenette which I'm separating from the main room with another couple of brick walls, then more stir sticks arrive on the scene, this time disguised as a bar gate. The industrial sink is a muck sauce pot that I've wiped free of nuggies. I draw in a little plug using a paint marker, add some Doll's House kitchen utensils, and I'll fill the sink with UV epoxy. The tap is made from a really stiff bit of modelling wire and glued into place with hot glue. For the stainless steel cabinets, I'll use the same method as the fridge, that is, use extra priming layers to try and make it look smoother, paint and weather the usual waves. I'm not really sure where these plastic rings came from, but junk in my house immediately gets put into projects, so we have ourselves a hob. A nice polymer fried egg will finish that off nicely. To make sure no egg spit gets on the wall, I'll make some kitchen tiles by cutting out and scoring a styrene sheet. Now to put the final pieces of the puzzle in place, and I've only gone and forgotten to make some bar stools. I quickly whipped them up by cutting several circular foam pieces and sanding them into a nice squishy rounded shape. I'll then paint them a butt worn green before giving them some peg legs. That shady corner is looking a bit bare still, so I'll give them a bit of custard el sol artwork for them to admire. If you thought the drinks were on Tifa, you are sadly mistaken, and so to take cash, I'm making a till using foam and a keyboard printed onto Bristol board and stuck on. Finally, with everything in place, it's time to hook up the lighting, and for this I'm using a basic micro LED string light. Using a hot wire cutter, I'll cut holes in behind the lamp, under the cupboards where I know the coving is, a couple of spots on the wall for lamps, and under the stove extractor. And finally, to make the wall lanterns, I'm just using 2 miniature plastic cups painted and upside down to house the LEDs. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. With all that said, there's nothing left to do but to show the beauty shots.